Hi there, I am LBD. Today, in tips number 11, originally published in Fly Tire Magazine, we're going to talk about Hackle fiber tails. Then maybe a little bit more too, because there's more to Hackle fiber tails than just how you tie them on the hook. Sometimes getting the material can be a problem too. Come on, let's go over to the vise and I'll show you what I mean. Here you can see I've placed a hook in the vise and I have attached thread. Started at the 1/3 position back from the hook eye, wrapped to the bend, and then part way back. We're going to talk first today about placing Hackle fiber tails with success on the hook. Well, first we're going to start with a Whiting Farms feather from a tailing pack. And I'm just going to get rid of some of this extra fuzzy stuff down here and get rid of that. And let me trim that off with my scissors, and the same thing on the other side, just so it's sort of out of my way. All right, there we go. Now this is a excellent tailing material, and I want you to notice when I pull it out to the side that the tips are fairly well lined up. They look really good. One of the problems that people often have in placing a Hackle fiber tail is they prepare to tear the feathers or the fibers off of the feather, and they're holding it just like I do here, and they give it a pull with the left hand in my case, and what happens is those fibers end up becoming misaligned instead of continuing to stay lined up. And they say, well, doggone, last time I did this it didn't happen, and this time they're misaligned. Why is that? Well, the reason being is we're going to this time show you the proper way to pull that off. Notice that I'm going to hold those with my left hand, and this time I'm going to pull this feather away with my right hand rather than using the left to pull the fibers away. Doesn't sound like much of a difference, but it makes a heck of a difference. So we'll start by pulling a quick pull, set that feather out of the way. Don't even have to look, fibers are all nicely lined up. Now here's where the problem comes with putting thread under a Hackle fiber tail, just like we have here. Let me just get ready to wrap this in place. And we wrap back, and everything looks good up to this point, just like the way we want it. And then we get towards the back here, and those Hackle fibers are slippery. And I want you to notice that that tail has already started to head downhill. Why? Because the dimension of the hook is less than the dimension of the hook and the thread together. And when we make our wraps, it'll invariably slip and head the thing. Let me exaggerate the point. It'll head it downhill. Well, I don't really like my tails to head downhill. So there is one time that we never ever put a thread base under a material, and that's when we do a Hackle fiber tail. So let me unwind this really quick and get this backed up to part of the way. There we go. I'll trim off that waste thread now. And now we're just going to go ahead and put a tail on just like we normally would, but because there's no dimension under it to make the thread in larger, or the thread around the hook larger than the hook itself, you get a nice tail that sticks straight out the back, just like that one right there. Looks pretty good. Well, let's wrap forward and prepare that to just accept wings or whatever we're going to do to it. Now, through the magic of video, we've removed the tail and returned the thread to our starting position. Back in the day, we used to source our Hackle fibers from the old India capes that we could get. And I've got one right here. And the feathers right here on the side were really superb for that purpose. Just really, really nice spiky fibers. But one of the problems that came along as we moved into genetic Hackle, we find that those feathers went away in a regular genetic Hackle. And so we've had to go to other sources for our Hackle fibers. Now here's one. This is a Whiting Farms saltwater cape. And you'll notice right off the bat if you go to this saltwater cape that, yeah, the fibers there are sort of okay, but you know that the saltwater is designed more to collapse in the water rather than support anything. Well, there's a solution to all of this. Number one, you can go to the Whiting Farms tailing packs, and they only have one problem, and that's sometimes the availability is not really great. Though we have found them on eBay, and maybe sometimes you'll even find them in your local fly shop. There is another solution though, and it doesn't have anything to do with hackle fibers. It has to do with materials that look like hackle fibers. And here I have a squirrel tail. If you really take a good look at these after you've stacked them and cleaned out all the underfur and everything, you end up with, let me tap my stacker here a little bit, you end up with some fibers that look an awful lot like the old hackle fibers we used to get off our India capes. And they provide a lot of support because they are a good stiff fiber. Let's go ahead and tie this on. And we'll just wrap that into place. Now that looks very similar to a hackle fiber tail. We could trim all this off. And let's say we wanted to have a grizzly mix with that. Well, you remember this saltwater cape that we had just a minute ago? Let me pull one of the feathers off of that. And we'll just take some of those really webby fibers, and all we're going to use them for is color in our grizzly brown tail. And we'll take those fibers off the same way we've done before, but you'll notice they're not quite as nice and spiky as the ones we got off of that Whiting Farms tailing pack. But anyway, they'll mix in really, really nice and make a grizzly brown mixed tail that we want for this particular fly. And there you've got the start of a Adam's tail by mixing hair and hackle. Give it a try.